sea,
by the sea,
by the beautiful sea.
you and me,
You and me,
oh how happy we'll be.
when each wave comes a-rolling in,
We will duck or swim,
and we'll float and fool around the water,
over and under.
and then up for air.
Pa is rich,
Good day.
Pa is rich,
so
Hi,
now
this
when
is
we
Harry
take
Orgovan, your host, and welcome to Our Lives, Our Future, brought to you today by the South Bay Historical Society, the Chula Vista Heritage Museum, the Chula Vista Public Library System, the City of Chula Vista, and today we have a representative from National City in the South Bay, Ron Morrison. Welcome, Ron.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So let's find out a little bit about your beginnings, where you were born,
Okay.
where you were brought up,
Oh, my
and
gosh.
how you came into the South Bay community.
Okay. Well, actually, I was born in what we now refer to as Shelltown. And Shelltown is, it was called Southeast San Diego, a lot of that area there, and just immediately north of National City. And it was called Shelltown because originally that was all underwater, and if you dug down hardly any distance at all you can find is shells. So it's still referred to as Shelltown. And so right underneath St. Jude there next to Choyas Creek. So anyway, so that's where I was actually born and raised, and then when I was entering into high school, we moved over into National City, even though, to be honest with you, even as a child, almost all my time was spent in National City because that's where all the activities were, the theaters and restaurants, everything else, and a lot of my friends were all National City, so that was like no big deal.
So what age was that when you moved to National?
15. But
You
it
was
was
15.
But it was only we were only a couple blocks outside National City in Shelltown. So
What originally brought your family to San Diego?
boy, long story, but basically they were from the southern Midwest, and they had Missouri, Arkansas area, and they had come out to the West Coast during World War II, and first taste they got of anything outside of that area. They moved back at the end of World War II, and didn't stay too terribly long, and decided, they'd already seen the elephant here in California, and so they moved out to California and settled there in Shelltown.
Oh, okay.
So that was kind of how the family got here. So as I say, raised in National City for the most part, and went to Sweetwater, did the whole bit. Married, family, was a general contractor. I was in construction, and then in the late 1980s, all of a sudden some things were going on in the city, and I kind of started getting interested in a couple things. And one thing in particular, they wanted to legalize gambling and bring a casino into National City.
Okay.
And which I'm not against gambling or whatever, or against Vegas or whatever, but there seemed to be something unsavory about the way they were going about this one.
Okay.
So I started doing some investigating, started showing up at council meetings, and I was already told that, well, we've already got 5 votes for this, so it's going to go through, so you can't do anything. Well, I got involved in organizing the community real quickly, and before long we had 5 votes going the other way and turning it down. And so this, my deal was, what else is going on in our city? What else is going on that we don't know about? And that's when I started finding out some other interesting things, and so started campaigning against them. I actually have brought lawsuits against the city, and which I prevailed in all of them. And but as a result, people were saying, "Wait a minute, things are going on here that we don't know about, and that we should be knowing about, and we should be revealed, and should be more. Now we call it openness and transparency and all this kind of stuff. In those days, it was much more about the concept of, just the idea of people wanting to know.
Yeah.
So for about 3 years, I was referred to as the 6th councilman, because even the LA Times said that I was more involved than any of the council members were. And but everyone after a while said, it's easy to throw stones from the outside and to say, things need to be better, but can you do better? So I ran for city council against 2 incumbents.
So that was in 1990, the first time?
1992.
Oh, okay. That's when you ran the second time, though, right?
Yes. Well, I ran in 1990 originally.
Right.
And then I ran in 1992.
Okay.
Against two incumbents and won. Mm-hmm. And so I did 4 terms as a city council member, 14 years as a council member before I ran for mayor. And then ran for 3 terms as mayor. And then with term limits, I was termed out. So I ended up running for council and won again. So this is my 28th year on the council. So been there just a little while.
So how many years did you have to be off the council before you could again run to be on the council?
No, I ran straight from being mayor to being on the council. So I just changed seats and changed offices.
Okay. So are you still under a 2-term limit?
It's a 3-term limit.
Oh, it's a 3-term.
So and it's 3 consecutive terms, much like Chula Vista is the consecutive term type concept. So you can run for 3 terms and you run for something else and back and forth you go.
Okay. So originally, when you were in National City, you were part of the Commerce's Beautification Committee.
We did a number of things. What I would do, I had one of my construction truck, and we would literally go around and just clean up the town, and just we would fill up dumpster after dumpster of stuff.
So there wasn't a service provided by the disposal company at that point in time?
There was, but it wasn't doing cleanup.
Okay.
You do your pickup at your curb. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't doing the kind of stuff where they'd go up and down the alleys and they would just, pick up stuff. So we started doing that, and once again, cleaning up the city was the whole idea. And as a result, getting people involved. And that's what became very important, was getting people involved, letting people know that they could make a difference. Right. And one of the things was, we had really a bad reputation, the city did. And we had a very high crime rate, and there's a lot of factors that go into that. And if it's the concept of, because we're a very small city that's landlocked by other cities, you can't tell where one city starts and the other one ends. But you got this small city that's in a metropolitan area, and yet you have a lot of the regional stuff. You have the regional shopping center, you have the regional car mall, you have all those different type of things. And so our population doubles during the daytime. So even though our crime stats are based on 60,000 people, which is our population, we have 120,000 on an average in our town during the daytime. And then you've got all these different things which are normally high crime, statistics, which is shopping malls and car parks. And anywhere, but normally those are for larger cities. So you put it in a small city with a small per capita, and it inflates your numbers. But then at the same time, if you go down a street and you see couches laying out on the sidewalk, or you see trash or whatever else, this looks like an easy place to commit crime. It looks like people don't care. So this is one of the things we started doing, was cleaning up the town, taking pride in our city. Mm-hmm. And it caught on. It became something where people really kind of got involved in taking care of their property, started cleaning up. We started taking care of neighborhoods. And as I say, you saw the pride coming back. Yeah. One of the things that happened when I first became mayor, I ordered some buttons, and 500 buttons, and all they said was, "I heart National City." And I got a box of these things came in. Staff looked at me and they go, "What are you ever going to do with that box? You're going to be stuck with that box forever." My last count was I was up to 40,000 of those things that we've done now. And so, it became, once again, this whole pride about, loving your town, loving your city. We are very much a multi-generational city. It's just one generation after generation. You don't leave, or even if you do leave and go to another part of the country or whatever, you have this huge dynamic about this is still your hometown. Right. And, interesting deal. We went to my wife's 20th reunion, and she went to Morse, which was a much bigger school than Sweetwater was. And we went to that, and on this one Saturday, and nobody knew each other. There wasn't a whole lot of people there, and 20th was like a big thing. The next Saturday was my 25th. Now normally most schools don't do 25ths, they do 20ths, 10ths and 20ths. My 25th, There was at least 2 to 3 times more people there at that one.
Yeah.
They were from all over the United States. Everybody knew each other. It was about community, even though Morris is right up against Sweetwater as far as boundaries. You can't, and
That's-
so, that just shows you what community's about.
That's what I've heard about Sweetwater High School, that it's really a special school and it has so much tradition, and there have been some really special people there teaching throughout the years. Can you tell me a little bit more about the high school? Because I think it's real important that the people know what a quality school that is.
Yeah. Well, it has a very long tradition. It's the second oldest high school in San Diego County. There was San Diego High, and then there was Sweetwater High, which was originally National City High at a different location. And it's went through a number of renovations and changes as far as the building and everything, but it has that extreme long tradition. It started out as the Sweetwater Sweeties. It was kind of hard to root for your football team and go Sweeties. I mean, it didn't. I don't know how.
Didn't work.
I don't know how well that. I don't know if they won too many games.
What is a sweetie, by the way?
Well, it just came off the idea of,
Okay.
of Sweetwater, I guess.
Oh, Sweetwater. of
It's
course.
Sweetwater, so they called themselves the Sweeties. Don't ask me.
Okay, sorry.
And where that thing came from, but but in the 30s it got changed to the Red Devils.
Okay.
And has stuck ever since. And now it's a very, very large sense of pride within National City. We are a single high school city,
Yeah.
and and it's interesting. When we had a problem a few years ago with the bleachers, they had a seismic problem, and so they were going to do retrofitting. So they did not allow us to do our graduation using our football field. And so they were going to go down to Southwestern College. And a lot of the other high schools in Chula Vista were using Southwestern College. And so, my thought was, I don't think the people in National City, I'm sorry, they have a problem. The Sweetwater River is considered the Jordan. You don't cross the Jordan, It's just, that's just the way it kind of goes. And so I wasn't too sure if they would even go down there, and it was going to be at 5 o'clock, which is a terrible time to try to get down near Southwestern College. And my niece had her graduation from one of the Chula Vista schools the week before. I went to it, and the stadium was maybe a quarter full. And so this next day I was going to Sweetwater. I go, I don't know if they'll even get half of that. They'll show up out there. It was standing room only. Mm-hmm. And so even as much as we thought, well, they're going to fix the bleachers and then we're going to be able to, and then next year we're going to go back. No, we have not been able to go back because it will not hold them anymore because everyone shows up. Everyone's your tia, your aunts, your uncles, your grandma, everybody, your friends, everybody shows up because this is, even though it's kind of on the edge of our city, it's really in the heart and soul. Yeah. And that school is. And so, I graduated from there. We are very unusual in that our council, and in fact, all of our elected officials, including our city treasurer and city clerk, every one of them is a Sweetwater graduate.
Wow.
Which
That's
is,
incredible.
in California,
That's incredible.
I don't know if there's another city council anywhere in the state where everyone is from that city.
I doubt it.
You're always from some other part of the country or some other country, for that matter of fact. So very highly unusual, but that is kind of a really key spot that really holds our community together.
Yeah, I've heard you had a real special drama teacher there, and you dedicated your one of the buildings at Sweetwater to her.
Yes, and Laura Charles.
Okay.
And was just a lady who, I forget now how many years that she taught there. It was a huge number of years, and I don't want to give a number, but I was like 50 years that she was teaching there. I mean, it was just, she just gave her heart and soul to that school. And she did everything, drama, she did the choir, she did all, just you name it. And she cracked a mean whip, but those kids loved her. Everybody just adored her, which is something we're kind of getting away from. We think the idea now we've got to cater to everyone for them to respect us or appreciate us. And she was the exact opposite. She was a person, she was very much a disciplinarian. She expected high things out of those young people. But not only did they give them their best, but they also respected her beyond belief. And I think that's something we're getting away from. But that was something, that was a very special lady. And so when it came time, they was able to go ahead and do the naming of the theater.
So, Ron, is it okay if I call you Ron?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, I appreciate it.
Anything except late for dinner.
Yeah, right. So tell me, when you were on the council in your years in public service, you were able to view the leadership of Kyle Morgan and George Waters as mayors. Can you tell me how they influenced you and what things you perhaps learned from them as you were tutored along the way, in a sense?
Yeah, I would really say, in particular, Kyle Morgan. I always considered him my mentor. He was an individual that was, how to put it? I mean, he came across very country, almost a country bumpkin type of an individual. And I always got the feeling that people would come into his office, because anyone who comes into your office is trying to sell you something. That's the whole idea. And I'm sure they saw this guy and they go, okay, we're gonna take this guy to the cleaners. And they would go out of there with a smile on their face and then realize they didn't have their pants on anymore. You know, I mean, he was just, had such a country savvy about him. And was an extreme businessman, but it was very beguiling to deal with this individual, because he was so intelligent, but he just came across as simple. And it was very deceptive. But at the same time, the guy was extremely, extremely bright. And I loved just sitting with him and learning from him. Now, we didn't always agree, but that was all right. I mean, he was the kind of, that didn't matter to him. The deal was that you could articulate where you were from, and that it actually came from your heart and not just from a political playbook. And so really appreciated that about him. And a quick story on him after he was retired and everything. And we were doing some planning on the downtown, which the downtown was a big thing to him. So I asked him if I could bring somebody over that was trying to sketch some ideas of visions of the downtown, and we would listen to him talk about his vision of the town so they could sketch it. And so we sat there for 3 hours while he talked, and this guy was sketching. What he didn't know is he wasn't sketching Kyle Morgan's ideas, he was sketching Kyle Morgan. Because this guy was a sculptor, and we were doing a bust of Kyle Morgan, because we were getting ready. Kyle knew nothing about this. We were going to unveil this bust in a plaza in the downtown is now Morgan Plaza. And but I wanted to make sure, I knew his health was failing. I wanted to make sure we did that. Didn't want to honor him after he was dead. I wanted to make sure we honored him while he was still living. But just a phenomenal individual. And and then learning from him, working under a George Waters, which was a very different individual, and learning how to work with someone that had a very different personality, and where you how do you put it? But you basically had to learn how to both work around them and work in such a way that everything kind of became their idea. You could bring up stuff, but so that you learn not everything has to be your idea. The idea is to make something happen. Right. Even if you have to let someone else think it's their idea, and then you go running with it. But as I say, but all that was a good learning experience. So that when I went in as mayor, some people want to. I talk to people right now and say, I'm thinking about running for mayor in 2 years. Well, what have you done? Well, I have never done anything with the city. I don't know anything about politics. I don't know nothing about government. Well, it's not a good place to be training ground starting at the top. Right. I'm sorry. And but people are not very patient these days, and get very ambitious. So, but as I say, but very, very, very interesting times.
Talk to me about your work with the elderly, those who are homebound, and also your work in honoring veterans.
Right. Number of things on that. As I think it's extremely important. As I say, we have a very large percentage of our population is elderly, and is infirmed one way or another, and so you get to know those people. You go into the homes, whether if they be rest homes or they be individual homes. You spend time with them. I mean, that's one of the biggest things is that isolation. I mean, it's terrible right now with the COVID-19 thing, but even before that, the whole idea of isolationism and just not being able to relate or be able to just have someone to talk to. Sometimes that's the most important thing you can do, is not even talk, just go and listen. Let them tell you a story. Let them do something. Sit there sometimes at their bedside, and he tell you sometimes when they don't have much time left, but you make sure that they know they're important at that stage. No, they're not going to be around for the next election. They're not going to be able to vote for you, but it's time. But this is the time to show them respect. Right. And that goes a long, long ways. And it's same thing with veterans. We had a situation. We had our veterans. We have our Memorial Bowl, which is there in Kimball Park, and we have these bronze plaques which list National City residents who died while in the armed forces during the different wars. And they were these big bronze plaques, and they had gotten aged. Let's just say, put it that way. The whole thing was looking pretty aged. Well, I guess someone decided that since they weren't being kept up very well, and it's a minority town, all these different things, that it's not a big thing on patriotism. So they went up there with either a pickup or a van. We're not too sure which. We just tell them the tire tracks. Backed up and with a chain jerked these bronze plaques off and drove off with them.
Yeah.
And I guess they thought that no one would think anything about it and they could sell the bronze. What they found out how fiercely patriotic National City is, and people went out and started hunting them down.
Oh my goodness.
And literally driving up and down streets, not of National City, but all the whole county, and was just searching for these plaques. And the word was going out to any and all people that bought bronze, everything else, that we're on the lookout for this. And so after about a week of this, they were found in a parking lot, the backside of a parking lot at San Ysidro next to the border. And because we had people at the border watching for them also, so that they could not cross the border with them. Because actually, those days you could get higher prices for bronze south of the border than you could here even. And and almost no damage to them at all. So we had these completely brought back up to brand new standards. They looked like as if they were just created. Completely redid it. We put in a roundabout, and in the roundabout there are 5 large concrete pillars with big bronze plaques on there, one for each one of our armed forces. And with that now we also have marble inlays that people can for loved ones that have been in the service can put them on their names and their years and everything else. And and that has become kind of a real centerpiece for our town. So I say, so the whole idea of patriotism, the idea of dealing with veterans and working with veterans. I was in our relationship with a naval base. I know they call it Naval Base San Diego, but what most people don't realize is that you can take all the ships that are on Naval Base Coronado, that are in the city of San Diego. It's not nearly the number of ships that are in National City. Right. Most of the ships are actually based in National City. I keep wanting to change the name to Naval Base National City, but they won't do it. But it's and we've had, in the work I get to do both at the state and the national level, I've got to work with a lot of cities, a lot of communities, and normally relationships are not very good between armed force bases and local government. We have had a phenomenal relationship with Naval Base San Diego, and with the different captains, the admiral over Naval Southwest, whatever, constantly. I work very hard to make sure we nurture those relationships, both on a professional and personal level. And I say, it's paid off with huge dividends. We work very closely together.
So Ron, you're talking about your personal relationships, and I understand that you honored Ruth Sax, who is part of our Remember Us the Holy Cost exhibit.
That's right.
Can you tell me a little bit about that time when you honored her and got to meet her?
Well, was with Ruth many times, and she was staying at one of our facilities there in National City, and one of our assisted living facilities there at Paradise, and and talk about a fascinating lady. Not only her story, and the story and the impact of that it has on people's lives, but even more so her as a person. I mean, she would come wheeling into the room, and that smile on her face and that glow about her would light up anybody's day, and it did. And that was just the kind of person that Ruth was. I referred to her as my girlfriend, and she referred to me as her boyfriend.
Oh my!
And, oh yes, and but as it was just. Just a phenomenal person who gave everything that she had for other people, both from a personal standpoint, and even more so from the story that she had to tell, and that we would never forget, and that we would always remember.
And I understand you gave Ruth the key to the city?
Key to the city and a proclamation, yes. And
That's rarely done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was one that I was, previous mayors kind of gave out keys to the city like as if they came out of the Cracker Jack box. I never really did that.
Right.
I think in my entire 12 years, I think I might have given out maybe 10 or 12. And including to people like some guy named after a video game, some guy named Pac-Man, I believe it was,
Oh, yeah.
Manny Pacquiao, and a few individuals along that line.
Sure.
So it's as I say, so that was kind of that was really a rarity. I didn't do that on an everyday basis. But as I say, Ruth was that special of a person.
Uh-huh. So talk to me about what happens on Thanksgiving. I've heard you do something with turkeys.
Yep. Well, interesting story, because we got a call from a principal at one of the elementary schools saying, we've got some families here that aren't going to have anything for Thanksgiving. Is there anything you can do? And I said, well, how many families are you talking about? And they go, oh, be about 25. I said, let me see what I can do. So we got 25 turkeys donated. The next year, principal calls up again and says, we still got that same problem. And I said, let me see what we can do. Another 25 turkeys that year. The following year, he got transferred to another elementary school. And he goes, I got the same problem with this school. Can we do it here? And I said, sure. But then the new principal at the old school calls up and says, I hear you've been doing this the last couple of years. Can you do it again this year? Okay, so now it became 2 schools. So it graduated from 1 school to 2 schools to now we do 10 elementaries.
Whoa.
We do the charter schools. We do the 2 junior high schools.
Oh, my.
We do the the high school, and then we also do the Southwestern College there in National City. And so this now turned into hundreds and hundreds of turkeys,
Yes.
all donated.
Uh-huh.
And one of the things is we have the companies that do the donating. They're all local companies.
Okay.
They're no large companies, none of the big corporate companies. They're gas stations. They're little mom and pop grocery stores. They're a couple of the ship repair places that are national cities, things along that line that do this. And so one year we ended up with some turkeys left over. And we go, what are we going to do with these turkeys? So, I'm sorry, I don't have that many freezers. And so we said, well, let's call Naval Base just in case. Mm-hmm. So I called the captain over at Naval Base, and I said, do you have any sailors that could use turkeys that otherwise aren't going to have anything this year? He says, I know we do. He said, how many have you got? And so I told him, I gave him a number. Next thing I know, I've got these sailors, and a lot of them were single mothers that are naval personnel that told me that they'd already told their kids they were going to have a can of Spam for Thanksgiving. That was the only thing they had. Realized almost all their money goes for rent. Yeah. They just don't have anything. And these are our young, men and women in our armed forces that are out there serving us,
Right.
and they can't even serve their families a Thanksgiving dinner. Can't afford to do that because we're not paying them enough. So we added them on. So now we've added on Naval Base. So now we do roughly 1,000 turkeys every Thanksgiving, and we have the sponsors are the ones that hand it to them. Yeah. And so we are able to do that, and it was just it was amazing. You'd see these, they would show up in their blue camis and crying for a turkey. It just it was both heartwarming and also shaming at the same time. And but talk about individuals that were just so grateful to everything, and should be the ones being grateful for them. Should be the other way around.
Of course.
So 2 things happen. One thing, people get a turkey, plus since then a lot of other things have been added on. All their side stuff that goes along with the turkey, and drinks and everything else, sodas or whatever else they need. And but we also give them an envelope, and it has 2 things in it. One thing is it tells them who the sponsors are.
Uh-huh.
And says, these are the people, these are the local merchants and everything else that are doing this for you. Make sure, we want to give them credit, and they should be. And so that's one thing. Another thing is an invitation, because what I've done, this would have been the 25th year, and I'm afraid because of COVID-19, it's going to be canceled this year. Oh. But this would have been our 25th year that I open up my house on the first Saturday of December to the community. It's open to any and everybody. and we throw a Christmas party, a holiday party.
Sure.
And all food, everything is all provided for everybody. And we've had as many as 800 people show up.
Whoa.
And so, but each one of these people then, they're given a letter and realize these are all people, and we do not select these individuals to get the turkeys. These are selected, each school or the Navy base or whatever, they pick the people that are the most needy.
Sure.
So these are the people that come from our community that are the most needy families. Those are the ones that we give invites, come on over and we're going to treat you. And it's open to everybody. And there are no speeches other than there's the food, there's the drinks, there's the bathroom. That's the only speech there's allowed.
Yeah.
No campaigning, nothing else is allowed at this deal. There are no recognitions. There's no name tags. So when people get in line for food, I don't care if you're a grandmother on welfare with your grandkids or if you're a congressman. Everyone's treated the same. No one gets head of the line, nothing else along that line. And so it's, and this was the kind of thing that we promoted, was the idea, and I say, this is no cost to the public. Everything is donated or out of my pocket. And so this is we do stuff along this line to make sure we incorporate the public, incorporate the community, and we turn them into a community event. I started every city does a state of the city address, which if you look in a dictionary, under state of the city address, it normally has a picture of somebody sleeping, because they are about as boring as all get out. And for a city our size, it normally ends up being maybe 30 people show up and it's basically staff because they have to. So I decided to do something different. So I started, and we called it a state of the city with a twist. And so no one ever knew what was going to happen. And I mean, literally nobody knew.
Yeah.
And it was, a mixture of live action and video and everything else all put together. All had to be coordinated, and everybody knew their part, but nobody knew what anybody else was doing. So all the pieces have to fit together for the evening. And luckily, it all came off pretty well. There were mistakes, but nobody, I don't think, ever realized it was a mistake. Let's put it that way. Right. But we did crazy, crazy stuff. But once again, the city used to have a Taste of National City where they would charge people $25, $30 for a Taste of National City.
Right.
Well, we started having restaurants coming in and providing food, and not just the little plates with little samples, full plates for dinner. And we have 20 restaurants. We would limit it to 20 restaurants, and they would fight for those 20 spots, and everything was free.
Oh my gosh.
And the state of the city was taken off the city budget. Everything was donated. There was no city money used at all, no taxpayer money. And we would end up with these huge crowds. We're talking like 1,200 people showing up from a city that normally should have maybe 30 people show up. But these things would be huge productions. But it wasn't just for show, it was all to tell a story. And people would come away and say, I didn't know this, I didn't know that, I didn't know this about our city, I didn't know that. And I want to get involved in this, I want to get involved in that. And so it brought up this whole idea of pride, which was one of the big things that I have always pushed so hard, is that as long as we're isolated in our homes, everything else, and we're not part of community. But the National City community is very fierce, has a very fierce pride, very defensive about its city and about its residents. Not a place where you want to come pick a fight, believe me. And it's something really to be very strongly proud of. And so I've loved the opportunity that the people of National City have given me to serve, and to be able to be creative and kind of do some differing things. And at the same time, it always doesn't have to be in front of the cameras. It doesn't have to be all of this. The main thing is that people are being served. And so we were able to do some things when I first became mayor at the end of 2006. And so it was the end of December. Well, we all know what happened at the end of 2006. The Great Recession hit. And so cities cut back. Libraries, like this one, were shutting down hours. A lot of libraries shutting down. Pools were shutting down. Everything else. And cities were cutting back on their budget. They were normally cutting back on all the service areas. Not too much on the administration areas, but the service areas, which are the cheapest areas, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So it really didn't make that big a cut, but it had the most impact upon the residents. We did the exact opposite. We expanded our library hours. We put more programs out there for the public. We did, started doing these type of things. At the same time, we initiated a 1 cent sales tax. And I promised the people, I said, this is going to go back. They said, if you want more things for your community, this is how we're going to get it.
Uh-huh.
And it passed overwhelmingly. And we put more money in a 2-year period into our parks alone than had been put cumulative into national cities' parks in over 20 years. And so started making those kind of improvements. People got to see, here's what we're going to, people don't mind paying extra tax if they get something for it. But if it's going down a rat hole and it just disappears and they don't see anything for it, this is what people are rebelling against.
Sure.
And so in a time when everyone was and this was right beginning of a recession, everything else, the time you don't do these kind of things, we put that into effect, and it literally has carried us through and been able to do a lot more things. During that time, the other cities, before that, people looked at our cities, and I was very involved in a lot of things. San Diego Association of Government, SANDAG.
Right.
I was a member of the board of that, and I was the chairman of SANDAG. And so I got to do their state representation at Sacramento, at their state organization. I was president of that organization twice. And then at their national organization in DC, I was president of that organization. So a little national city was all of a sudden getting to do all this stuff, but I get to talk to all these cities and everything else and work closely with them, and they're all going, we're having to cut back, we're having to do without, people are screaming, how are you guys doing more?
Right.
How are, you guys, we're having to basically not do any road work, and you guys are doing replacing all your roads, you're replacing all your sidewalks, everything else. And we said, because we're getting ready for the future.
That's
If
really
you
good.
wait until the recession's over and then you start doing those things, by the time you get done, you're into the next recession.
Right.
And you're behind the times. So, we're going through a large housing boom in National City.
Oh, okay.
We're the densest city in the county. We're only 7.2 square miles of land.
Oh, wow.
And 60,000, and I say we double population every day. So we have a lot of commercial, a lot of industrial, and so we're the densest city in the county. But for the last, I forget now how many, several years, we've also been growing at the fastest rate in population of any city. So there's a lot of planning has went in. Our downtown, when I was a kid, at that time it was National Avenue. Now it's National City Boulevard, because it got confused with National Avenue in San Diego all the time. But that was the second downtown. There was downtown San Diego and there was downtown National City. Right. And those were the two. If you wanted to go shopping in San Diego County, that's where you went. South Bay Plaza was the first shopping center, commercial shopping center in San Diego County.
I remember with the big Santa Claus.
The big Santa Claus. My parents were there for the ribbon cutting. They took me out.
Is that right?
And and underneath the shoe store on the corner, what has been the Payless shoe store, there's where the National City Atomic Bomb Shelter's at.
Oh,
it's right underneath there. There's all this history that goes with that, but National City Boulevard was it. And if you wanted to do anything, you wanted to go to doctor, if you wanted to go to Greyhound bus, if you wanted to do restaurants, you wanted to do theaters, that's where you went for everything. Well, that all changed. South Bay Plaza kind of took the direction out of that. Then you had Plaza Bonita. They just kept moving the commercial center away, and that area became deserted. So we put in a plan for that downtown area, the downtown specific plan, that right now today, between Division 16, that 16 block long area, by right now you can build 5,500 housing units right there.
Oh, okay. By
right. And if you do a traffic circulation study and mitigate, where if it says you might have to do no mitigation at all, or you might have to do some mitigation, but as long as you do the study and you do whatever it says, you can go up to 10,000 housing units right now by right. And so, but there's all the planning and all the infrastructures already went in place for all that to happen.
Right.
And so that's what we're starting to see happen now.
Oh,
and it's taken a number of years to get us to that point, but we're getting there.
Okay, so you talked about SANDAG. And today we have a proposal by the head of SANDAG, and he's saying we need $177 billion to put in this big transit hub he'd like to see go in. And also we're talking about producing some toll lanes on certain parts of freeways and stuff. How do you view this proposal?
Well, a number of things happen. We have to go what they call an RTP, a regional transportation plan, that has to be submitted to the state and federal government. Well, we're already past the date for that, so we got an extension, which is hard to get, but we got an extension saying we want to relook at this. And that's this relook they're doing now. My only problem is the plan they've got is about as grandiose a plan as you can come up with. They're wanting to compare it with Rio de Janeiro and Paris. Well, I'm sorry, we are not Rio de Janeiro or Paris.
Right.
Last time I looked on the map, anyway. And so, the problem comes up is that you've got this huge plan, which I think the 177 billion is a minimal number, not the absolute number. And we're going to come up against the end of, by the time they put this thing together, we're at the end of our extension. We've got to present them with a plan. And if we haven't given any alternatives and studied those alternatives so that we can present that, we're stuck with this or nothing.
Oh, no.
But see, this still has to go to the voters.
Right.
And right now, I don't see within the next 10 years, voters being willing to put up that kind of money.
Right.
Realizing the largest project that San Diego County has ever had is now the Mid-Coast trolley line. That's $2 billion. And now you're talking about transit projects basically going to 177 billion plus. I think there's a lot of things that can be done. I don't want to use the word on the cheap, but I think can be done economically.
Right.
That will greatly increase transit capacity, everything else. But see, they're talking about transit capacity, transit use going from like less than 2% of the riders of traffic to maybe 7%. Well, we're going to spend 177 billion to do that. Right. I think there's better ways to do it. And I think it's great to think big, but I think there need to be some parallel tracks so that when we get to the end of this deadline, we've got a choice. What is realistic, what we would like to do, and what is realistic? And let's think big, but let's think realistic. And make sure it's something that the voters will at least have a chance to vote on.
Of course. So in this day of social distancing, don't we even need to rethink the way we look at mass transit and how we protect the people utilizing these services?
Well, we're going through COVID-19 right now, but who knows what we may go through next.
Right.
And so I think a lot of things we've realized our world has changed.
Yeah.
And I think our way of looking toward the future is changing. And yet, if you look at some of these things like transit and things like that, we're still looking at transit how people were looking at the future of transit 20 years ago, instead of what could be the future now. Right. And we've got to get our crystal balls out and say, okay, what are some safe guesses? And so that we don't go to one extreme one way or another, where we totally discount so that we are not prepared or that we're over prepared. And not doing it. There's a lot of alternatives. I've talked with individuals that that are pushing a lot of the new thoughts, and it's interesting because you'll bring up something and they'll talk about pollution. So you'll talk about well, wait a minute. If you talk about autonomous vehicles, they can compact a freeway like crazy because your distance between vehicles is 18 inches. And I know that's scary to a person in my generation, but that's the reality. And not only that, they're all electric, so there's your pollution. Well, yeah, but they're still cars. Well, are you just anti-car, or are you pro-environment? Which one is it?
Right.
We got to get past the semantics, and all these different issues, and start looking at some things creatively. Look outside of our quote unquote outside of our box. So many people in my generation, we still want to have single-family homes because Ozzie and Harriet had single-family home.
Right.
Well, I hate to break it, except on Nickelodeon, Ozzie and Harriet are dead. And the world has changed. And most people today, most people that are coming up, don't necessarily want, to be mowing their lawn and doing all this yard work, everything else. And so micro units and things on this are going to need to be looked at. And it's a different environment, and we can't be planning for our generation. We've got to be planning for 2 or 3 generations down the road.
So recently we had some experiences in our communities where we had protests and we had people sometimes destroying things within the city governments and the areas of our community. And you made a statement on Facebook, I believe,
Yes.
which some people didn't necessarily care for.
Right?
And can you explain what that statement was
Sure.
and what you meant by that? And everything?
It was a meme. It wasn't mine. It was somebody else's. I just copied it.
Oh, okay.
I had seen some ones that I didn't approve of. I saw this one. I said, okay, this is closer to what I can agree with.
Okay.
And what it said was, due to COVID-19, rioters are going to need to stay home, and I'm going to change one word, and destroy their own stuff.
Right.
And some people took real offense to that, and said, well, you know, you're against Black Lives Matter, you're against I said, no, it does not say anything. There's nothing racial in this. There's nothing about protesting. I will fight like crazy for a person's rights under the First Amendment, which is freedom of speech, which is freedom of assembly. But wait a minute, no, it's not. It says freedom of peaceful assembly.
Okay.
The word peaceful always gets left out.
Okay.
And then also to address your government for grievances and regress. So those things I'll fight for like crazy. But to go and destroy people's property or to go tear up a community, particularly when it's not your community, is even worse. No, there is no right to that. And, you know, that is totally wrong. And so these people were going, well, wait a minute, you're putting property before people. And I go, yes and no. If you've got a building that's on fire, you're going to try to put that fire out and save the building. Unless you find out there's people involved in there, then your first priority is get those people out. If the building burns, too bad, you got to get the people out. That's your first priority. So there, people are before the property. Now, if a person is being injured or killed or whatever in Connecticut, doesn't give me a right to go and burn down a building in San Francisco. Now, I'm sorry, there's the difference. And so you just don't go, and particularly what happened like in La Mesa, most of that was small local business people.
Right.
And mom and pop type stores that people were taking skateboards and busting the windows and just ripping everything out. And this was something entirely different. And what I said, and so we had some individuals decided to make some political hay out of that and to get some political revenge on me. And so came out with a 3 members of the council decided to censure me. And so, and for doing that. Now I could see if you were talking about, making racial statements, or if you were talking about even against protesters, or, this was none of that. And I'm sorry, and what I told them was, I would hope that, for one thing, that nothing ever happens in National City. But shall we say we had one of our local businesses, and I named off a few of them. If their business gets destroyed, I pointed to the 3 council members. I said, are you going to go to them and apologize because you didn't take a stance against rioting and looting? Mm-hmm. Take a stance for protesting, for freedom of speech, but against rioting and looting. Right. Because if those people's businesses and their livelihoods and their families and their employees, everything else, are destroyed. Mm-hmm. And I said, and I mentioned, I said, luckily in National City we had a couple protests that went through town, mm-hmm. and but it was all peaceful. Mm-hmm. Great, go for it. We did have a couple of individuals in particular, and they with a group. One guy's named MTO, another one's Lucky Morales, and they went out and within the community, and they got the word out. This is National City. This is our community. You do not come here, and you do not destroy. You say your piece. You do whatever, but you do not destroy our. And I said, those are the people to be looked up to. And I pointed at 3 council members, and I said, you guys are an embarrassment that you will not stand up for this community. And so anyway, so I got some pressure put on me about that. Mm-hmm. But as I say, no apology on that one at all. Mm-hmm. I will continue to stand firm for people's rights to free speech and protest and regress against government, but not to destroy and hurt people, destroy businesses, things along that line. Absolutely not.
Yeah, I think your point's very well taken. I know when I was young, I had anger about things.
Sure.
And you have to learn how to not destroy that which is around you, your family, mm-hmm. your community. and you have to deal with your own anger. And I know volunteering and getting out there in the community and working to make it a better place is one of the best beginnings you can do. And I know you have done that, and I hear your story and what you've done for our South Bay community, and I want to commend you.
Well, thank you.
And thank you very much. You really are a good leader for our community, and the things you've done and your ideas and promoting and the way things should be. I really appreciate you, and thank you very much for being with us today.
Well, thank you, and the work has only just begun.
Oh, good. And thank you all for watching us today. We appreciate you being with us for Our Lives, Our Future, episode number 5 with Ron Morrison. Thank you very much, Ron. Say goodbye.
Bye, everyone.
And we'll float and fool around the water.
Over and under,
And then up for air.
Pa is rich,
Ma is rich.
so now what do we care?
I love to be beside your side.
Beside the sea, beside the seaside, by the beautiful sea.